Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a self-published game that is seeking funding on Kickstarter right now. That game is called Corporate Times. And if you're interested and if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. You can go there, find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. Now, Corporate Times is a competitive game for up to 5 players where you and the other players are the heads of these mega corporations that are vying for control of the country. And while the country is undefined within the game, of course, this is a familiar story to people living in real life right now, no matter where you live, most likely. But you're trying to gain control of the different markets of the economy, and therefore gain control of the nation, essentially. There's various different markets, things like the media and energy and internet technology, things like that. You'll try to buy market shares there. You'll try to manipulate the media through these news cards in order to gain the upper hand or to foil your opponents. And sometimes you'll have to defend yourself against these cards as well. And you're going to do all of these different things in order to get income and then use that income to do more of these things. And then what you're going to be trying to hopefully get are points, of course, because this is a game. And the first person to get to 20 points is the winner of the game. Now, of course, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype copy of the game. So do bear in mind, as always, that what you see here may change in the final version. That is why you want to go to the Kickstarter page to find out more information. But then, in any event, after this, we will come back and discuss it further. Corporate Times is a competitive game for 2 to 5 players. Each player controls a mega corporation that is vying for control of the entire nation's economy. To do this, they'll use their income to buy market shares in the various markets of the economy and manipulate the media to their benefit by using news cards. By carefully manipulating these factors, they can gain points. The first player to get to 20 points is the winner of the game. Set up the game by laying out the main game board. There are 3 main sections. First, a scoring track for the points you'll need to win the game. Every player will put a token in their color at the start. And there's also an income track, which also gets a token from each player placed at the start. The larger section of the board is dedicated to the 11 different economic markets. Each market has several features: spaces for players to place market share tokens, icons indicating how much it costs to buy market shares with either cash or bank loans, an icon that indicates how much you move up on the income track when you buy shares, and icons indicating the requirements necessary to purchase 1, 2, or 3 shares. There are also limitation tokens. These are randomly distributed to each market at the beginning of the game depending on the number of players, and they will limit the amount of total market shares that can be purchased in a particular market among all players. Next to the board, you'll make a bank of cash in different denominations, counted in billions, as well as debt slips for when you take out bank loans. Every player starts with 20 billion in cash, and cash is always kept face down so that other players can't tell how much you have as the game progresses. Each player also gets a set of market share tokens in their color, indicating 1, 2, or 3 shares. The 1 and 2 share tokens also have a side to indicate when a market is under criminal suspicion, which we'll get back to later. Finally, a deck of news cards are shuffled and placed nearby, which we'll get back to in a moment. Then you can begin the game. Randomly determine who will go first. Each player's turn of the game is broken down into 4 phases. The first phase involves drawing a news card and resolving it. If instead you have 1, 2, or 3 shares in the media market specifically, you will then draw 3, 4, or 5 news cards, respectively, resolving 1 for the turn, discarding 1, and keeping all the rest in hand to resolve later. These cards come in 4 different varieties. Market change cards will adjust the income and purchase cost of a specific market either up or down, and in some rare instances will adjust 2 markets at the same time. A market change card is placed onto the market itself to denote the change and is not discarded until a new change card affects that market later. Bid cards let players get into a bidding war to gain their first, second, or third market share in a specific market. Every bid card has an entrance fee that every potential bidder must pay if they'd like to participate in the war. Then they calculate their bidding score based on their shares in other markets like banking and politics, and they can gain bidding points by spending $2 billion per point or using the special action card campaign. When only one player remains in the bidding, they pay the bank all the money they've spent to take their market share. Any losers pay half of their money to the bank. Bad news cards will either affect you or get passed on to another player if you own market shares in the media market. There are several different bad effects that can happen. You may be forced to pay the bank a specific amount of money or an amount based on your score, lose market shares altogether, or come under suspicion for criminal activity in a certain market, forcing you to be unable to purchase more market shares there until it's removed. Finally, there are action cards, which are beneficial and produce a variety of effects, like campaign cards to help with bidding wars, cards that cancel reforms or criminal suspicion, cards that give you extra purchases, and cards that give you precious points to win the game, usually by meeting market prerequisites or trading in cash. Back to the phases. After resolving news cards, you can collect income from the bank equal to your place on the income track. Next, you must pay off any debt that you have. If you had previously taken out a bank loan, you'll need to make payments over the course of 3 turns until the debt is paid. The icon on the board in the market will always tell you how much you'll have to pay per turn. Set your debt slips in front of you to remind you of this. If you can't make a payment on a turn, you're going to have to start selling off market shares. The final phase of your turn is making one purchase. Using either cash or a loan from the bank, you can place a marker on a market to denote getting a market share there, or increase the amount of market shares you already have. By doing so, your income will increase and you'll gain points. You need to make sure you keep in mind the share limitation for that market and keep in mind the requirements for certain markets, like already having shares in certain other markets, etc. Also, it is possible for players to trade shares and cards and to make other agreements. You can even agree to sell your purchase opportunity for the turn to another player. Turns continue like this, with players buying up market shares and manipulating the news cards to their advantage until one player has successfully made it up to 20 points and is automatically the winner of the game. That is corporate times. Well, the most fascinating thing about corporate times is the synergy between the different markets and the news cards and how it all interplays together. The whole idea of like, okay, I want to get market shares here, and by doing that, especially in places like the media market, it can have significant impact on how the rest of my market share hoarding is going to go, and especially how it relates to those cards, the news cards as well. And that's the thing too, is like there's one news deck, but so many different options within it and different types of cards that might have to be resolved. Sometimes you're going to have to get hit with those, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you can hold them for later to use to your benefit later as well. But it's all in service of manipulating these markets, and the whole thing with the market changes and how they go up and down, like real life economics do. But also how you have this, you're trying for different things. You're not, because it's a low point threshold to win the game, you're not going to be getting points necessarily every round. You're setting yourself up for later. So get points when you can, get market shares when you can, but set yourself up so that you're getting a huge amount of income as you go. Be prepared to take those bank loans if you have to, because you can if your income coming in is enough, but it can still be risky. If you can't make your payments on your debt one round, just like in real life, things are going to be really bad for you. You'll have to start selling things off. And that could happen because you never know what's going to happen coming out of that news card deck. You could get hit with unexpected loss of income, taxes. It turned out that you were hiding some stuff from the IRS, things like that, and now you're going to have to pay for that, and you can't pay for your debt for the next turn. So things can spiral out of control if you're not too careful. But just like in real life with real market economies, you're going to want to take risks if you want to get ahead, because it is a race to that finish line, essentially. So you can't just play it safe and say, I'll dabble a little bit, take a few turns to just build up my resources. You can do that, but you have to be very carefully setting up plans to buy as many market shares as you can. Also making very careful use of the cards that get you points as well. Trying to go for, because getting individual market shares or increasing what you have in a place is so important, getting involved in those bidding wars through the news cards can be incredibly important too. It's very pay to play, it costs you a lot of money just to enter the bidding war, but it can be extremely beneficial. So this is, again, the risk versus reward, knowing when to do it, knowing how often to do it, racing to do it when possible. It feels like you have a lot of agency in the game because you have lots of different options for markets to go into. There's the obvious choices, of course, and like media and things like that. But diversifying is also very important, and holding on to cards for a later date when you know it's going to be most powerful, things like that. So a lot of stuff going on in the game, but really it doesn't take that long to teach. It doesn't take that long to set up. And while you have a lot of different options, it doesn't feel too overwhelming. You have a very clear route to victory. It's just your different options on how you get to that point. So, interesting theme, corporate, a mega corporation. If you can stomach actually playing as a corporation in this day and age, then you can play the game ironically too, then and role play as much as you want as being like this evil megalomaniac. It is very interesting how you manipulate the different markets and manipulate the news cycle as well, especially against your opponents. So if any of these different things appeal to you, don't take my word for it. Go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information for yourself. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is the self-published game Corporate Times. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.